All right, we're
There we
live.
go. Hello. Wow, another our second time. Second
Yeah,
time, not quite third time lucky, on second time lucky. Let's go for it. See how it
yeah.
goes. How you doing, Darren?
Very good. How you doing?
Hmm. Yeah, it's been a busy week. What's today? Wednesday. Gosh, the week's just
Yeah,
flying by already. Every week seems to fly by.
yeah.
Never enough hours in the day.
So I just got off work. How late is it over there?
Well, you're over in Orlando. I'm here in the UK, just outside of London, and it's just gone 10 p.m. at night. So
Uh,
I'm doing the graveyard shift.
so we'll have to try next week during my lunch break and your 5 p.m. and
Yeah,
see how that goes and see
yeah,
how
because I
people.
think it'll be good for those wanting to tune in who also in other time zones.
Yeah,
We'll shift it around a bit and try and accommodate others, those who can join live. And hopefully we'll get more and more live participants as we progress with
yeah,
other shows. And yeah, hopefully you guys will
absolutely.
find it useful. And we
Yeah,
are doing this for you guys. And really, I think what we thought, Darren, is to just start from the beginning, right? Because there's
absolutely.
so much to learn. And I remember, when I first started, I was like, oh, I opened up the console. I just didn't know where to start. In fact, I think the way that I first went in was, if you go into a SharePoint list and you've got a list and then you create a Power App from there,
Uh-huh.
and then you get the predefined one, and that really confused the hell out of me. So I was like, wow, yeah, because the way they configure it is a little bit different to how you configure it
Yeah,
when you just go in and start from scratch. So that confused me, and I think going in and doing it yourself from
yeah.
scratch, that's definitely the way for me. And I think everyone has their own journey,
You
but for
know
me
what?
that
I'd
was
agree, and I've spent some time with absolute beginners as sort of like which would be our target audience tonight. An absolute beginner hasn't really done anything with Power Apps, or maybe you need a refresher on the basics.
mm,
And what I recommend is that we do what we're going to do tonight, which is we start off with a blank canvas, and we just create an app, and we start off with a gallery on one side and a form on the other, and we connect to a data source. We get that data source to show up in that gallery, and then we edit it with that form on the side. Make sure we got
mm.
some buttons on the side. And that right there, just going through all the details of that whole process, that might take us the full hour. And if it doesn't, we can answer some questions and maybe go a little further in. Um, and then as you described, how you've got a SharePoint list and you can point point Power Apps at that SharePoint list, and
Mhm.
it'll create a little app for you. I actually like to show people that after they get these basics down, because after they know these basics, then we could go into that app that's generated for you, and we could sort of explore more of what they're actually doing for you. And people seem to have a better time with that generated app at that point.
Okay, cool. Should we jump right into the console then?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me share my screen here, put us to the side. Okay, so we'll start off. Created this little app. I clicked on new app here at the top, and this little dialog box came up, and I'm going to leave it as a tablet. I do prefer a tablet, probably 90% of the cases, because a tablet app can be used on a phone. If you just turn your smartphone
Mhm.
sideways, you can use it that way, and it also gives you the most room.
Yeah.
And then if a client says, hey, this is going to be for mobile devices, then I'll pick the phone. There really is a third option. We could do some type of responsive layout that would work in either. I haven't had too much of a need for that. I haven't had any clients or customers say, hey, this needs to be completely responsive. I would probably go that way if somebody said, hey, this needs to be used in a portrait landscape and a landscape orientation.
Mm.
Um, and not wanting to keep both of them up all the time, two different apps. I probably want to do a responsive type of
Yeah,
thing.
and that's pretty advanced stuff, isn't it? Doing the response. I've played around with a little bit of it, and there's some
Yeah,
formulas and stuff that you have to get to know. I suppose from my point
yeah,
of view, find out what your base is going to be using. I mean, if you want them to use phones for the app, then go for the phone. If you need more real estate, go for the tablet. But
yeah.
is it possible? Is there an easy way to Like, let's say you've done it on a phone and you want to, you want to change it to a tablet. Is there an easy way to do that, or is it just redo it? Just copy and paste and reshuffle the layout on the tablet.
There two things come to mind. Number one is there is a copy and paste trick that you could do, that you can copy and paste things between completely separate apps. And what you do is you go to a screen and you hit Control A, which is a shortcut to select everything in whatever context you're in. So it will select all the controls on that screen. So you copy that, and then you go over to the new app and you paste over there. And a lot of times it does bring over uh, those things. That you may have a few errors to correct, but if you just try to, copy one control and paste it over into a new app, typically that doesn't work. The other thing I would say is there's actually an open source, a little bit of a code repository out there. I believe it's on GitHub that will actually convert. There's a bunch of tools that are aggregated together in a repository for Power Apps. So if you go out to GitHub and do a search for Power Apps, you'll probably find it. It's probably the most popular repository out there, or at least one of them. And there's different tools that are in there. One of them is to convert one to the other. So thought
All
I'd
right.
mention that.
I've never heard of that. So where do our listeners or viewers find that? Is it?
I would probably, let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's go out to GitHub. Let's see, Power Apps, GitHub, and let's see what comes up here.
I mean, how do you actually run the tools? Is it like an application you install and
That would probably be a good topic to like a separate
one? Yeah.
podcast, I think. Because if we go down that road too much, we probably won't have any time for the basics tonight. But also I don't have that link ready.
Yeah.
But
Okay, we can paste it later, can't we? Yeah.
Absolutely. And we do have Victor here. And hi there. Heard through the grapevine you can change twice as much charge twice as much for the responsive apps. Okay, they require much more time and thought. Absolutely. I would probably be charging twice as much. Yeah. Yeah. I would also charge probably 3 times as much if somebody wants me to write a disconnected application, because it really increases the complexity in my experience. Have you ever done a disconnected app before, Barry?
No, so that is what, just caching all the data on the machine in memory, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so you have an app, and you got a data source, but let's say they go into a building and everything's metal, everything's concrete, and they lose connectivity to the cell phone towers, or there's no Wi-Fi, and so you need to be able to work with the data. So what you have to do, there is a function called save data. So you get the data, then you have to save it to the device so that it's there so you can work with it. And then you work with it inside, the in-memory collections. You got to work with collections a lot. So you save it, then you get the data to work with it. And then when you establish that they're, they have connection, you got to do actually do the patch back to the data source. It adds a lot of complexity. And you got to think about, what if this happens now? Let's say if they go they just lose connectivity. The user wasn't prepared for it. You didn't write code right here. So it almost moves away from a low code type of situation.
It's getting into like a full blown app, developed app.
Yeah. There's some more code there. What I thought while I was thinking about our outline of things that we're going to cover tonight was, is there anything more basic than what we're doing tonight? Using a gallery and a form. We'll connect to a SharePoint list here in a moment. But is there anything more basic? Is there anything like prerequisites to this?
I didn't know if maybe it is too basic, but maybe just the basics of the console, because I know if you put a text box in, it's got properties, and there's you can on the right hand menu, there's on the right hand side, there's a menu there with different properties in the tabs, and then there's a drop down list and a formula bar. So maybe just a very brief outline.
That's a good point. I like that. So I just went ahead and clicked on create, so we at least have this environment. So as you're talking about it, I can sort of point to it. So let's bring over a button here so we can talk about all these different windows. Something that I was thinking of is, when I was learning Power Apps, this is what I was thinking way back then, is like, what was it that would sort of got me stuck? And one of the things is that my IT department didn't allow me access to Power Apps. So
all right.
A lot of people, they might hear about Power Apps, they might want to learn it, but they may not have a job where that Power Apps environment has already been created, or their IT department hasn't given them access yet. So I think a lot of people deal with that. And there are some, and perhaps we could have a whole episode just based on that, where we could lead people through creating their own environment, like a paid one. So did you know that it only costs $5 or $6 a month to get your own Office 365 environment with SharePoint and OneDrive and all the Office 365 tools? You probably know
Yeah,
that, right? It's
and
working on
there's a develop. I use a developer license, which you can
okay,
apply
and
for.
that's free, right?
Yeah, it's free, and you get 20. I think you get 25. No, I got mine off the back of an MSDN license, but I
Yeah.
think you can also apply for developer environment or developer license, where you get an E5, you get 25 accounts that you can
And
use in your environment.
does that just renew as long as you're
Yeah,
using it?
you
Okay.
have to use it X amount of time, otherwise it'll fall away. But yeah, if you're using it and you're developing in it constantly, then it just renews every month.
Okay. And then I know that there is a trial environment you could create,
Yeah.
and that expires, I believe, in 30 days. That it could be extended, perhaps. I
You know, the only thing about environments that expire, you know, you might be doing a whole lot of work and then suddenly it's gone. You know, so
oh yeah,
just
I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't
remember
want to
to
do that at all.
keep your environment active, keep working in it. But yeah, it also maybe it's a bit of a push to make sure that you're constantly developing in your environment, right? Because you don't want to lose everything, or
Yeah,
you know, or you have to back it up and make sure you got backups.
yeah. For me, I wanted to start using the stuff. I didn't want anything to be messed with. I wanted to, jump in with both feet and learn a little bit about the managing the whole environment, aside from what my IT department was going to allow me to get access to. By the way, Data is King says, hello, everyone. Hello, Data is King.
Hello.
Yeah. And so another thing is, before you start writing your first app, the question might be, what data source are you going to connect to?
Hmm.
Now, typically that's going to be SharePoint. So I did a little poll on my YouTube channel. I said, "Hey, what all data source do you guys reach for? Most of the time when you know do a Power Apps?" And 70% of people said SharePoint, and that's probably because of the licensing.
Mm.
But Dataverse is probably the very best data source to use with the Power Platform, because it was actually created for the Power Platform. And some people say, "Oh, SQL Server is probably the best." Well, the Dataverse databases are actually SQL Server databases. It just has more stuff bolted onto it, right?
It's like database as a service, right? It's just a database. The table's all there. You don't have to manage any underlying
Yeah,
infrastructure.
it's out there in the cloud, and it's a little more user friendly if you're not a developer, a database administrator, a database person. So it's all around really the best solution if you have that premium license. But for most of the cases, because 70% of the people out there are using SharePoint in any type of training environment, for the most part, unless the video is about Dataverse, I will be reaching for a SharePoint list.
Yeah. I think I've only used SharePoint. I mean, I think we spoke briefly on the last one. You can get
Yeah.
Dataverse and Teams for free. Haven't tried it yet. But I mean, just a quick one. In terms of cost, I mean, how much additional cost are you looking at for a Dataverse license, let's say US
Sure.
dollars?
The big thing that's gonna keep you restricted is just a Power Apps license. So let's go take a look just real quick, and then we'll get back over to Power Apps. Just looking at the licensing. So if you're just gonna be working with one app a month, you could get by with this $5 plan.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but
And
if you're
does that include Dataverse, or is that just yeah?
I believe, if I'm not really an expert in licensing, so I'm gonna throw that out there. Okay. Um,
I don't think anyone is. You have to go to university to get a
I've heard it's
expert
almost
in
like
Microsoft.
it's like some secret dark art.
It
And
is certainly.
the thing about licensing is, I go in and I'll see what I can do, but I can spend some time learning more about the licensing, but for all I know, they'll change it the next month.
Mm.
So I don't really invest too much time in that. I'll go out here and look at something here. Um, as you see, so these are the capacity.
Oh,
So
it's included.
Microsoft Dataverse. There you go.
There you
So it looks
go.
like all three of these you'll get access to the Dataverse. It's just, how much space do you
Yeah.
want?
Yeah.
Okay.
They reel you in, don't they? Give you a
They do.
little bit just to get you working, and then you're like, oh damn, run out of space, and then they throw some
And
hefty
it's sort of
lump on
true
you.
for all the cloud services out there. I heard of
Oh
one
yeah.
organization I was working for. It's like, oh yeah, they really invited us to come out and create all this stuff in the in Azure, and then after that, one I believe Azure gives you like the first year for free, and then after that year, they got their first bill for like
Oh yeah.
$1 million. Like, oh, I want to get off of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Whoever said going to cloud saves money has lied. I think it is more expensive. It's the subscription model that gets you, but obviously you get all the great functionality. So that's
Yeah.
that's in that sense.
And by the way, Rachel says this is awesome. Well, you're awesome, Rachel.
Hey Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So that's what you're looking at there. Five a month, $20 a month. And then you got the pay as you go plan. So if you
Mm.
want to look and actually read all this, and I believe they have like a 30 page PDF that tells you all about the licensing.
Yeah.
For me, I'd
I-
rather spend my time just learning about
yeah.
Power Apps or writing Power Apps than
Yeah.
reading.
I think yeah, the five that if you want to, it's basically investing in yourself, right? If you want your own environment and you got to pay that, but certainly look at either that or look at the developer license for just a Office 365 developer license. I think search up that and
Yeah.
you should be able to click your way through there.
Yeah. So I was thinking if we put it out there and people have an interest, maybe we could devote a whole episode to one of these things, maybe a whole episode for licensing, a whole episode
Yeah,
for creating your own environment, that type of thing.
yeah,
So if you guys are interested in any of this stuff or anything that we haven't even mentioned, leave it in the live chat right now. Or if you're watching this after the live chat, put it in the comments below, wherever you're watching it, and we will obviously be taking notice of that. Okay.
for
All right,
sure.
so I'm here in Power Apps. So you gave me a great idea. So I'm going to delete this button I just added. So if you're a complete beginner, you've never seen or been in Power Apps at all before, there are some visual user interface elements that you can bring over to a screen. Okay, so this is our canvas here that we can bring over here. These things are called controls. So you're used to controls. You've been on websites or used application. You guys know what a button is. So you can see here on the
I'd
insert
say.
menu, we got a button. Okay, so a button over here on the left side. We got a tree view. And if you open up, so these three little vertical lines, this is called a hamburger. If you ever hear somebody say, click on the hamburger, that's what they're talking about, this little, the three lines there. And you got different section over here on the left side. Now, the first one is the tree view. This allows you to see all your screens and all the controls on the screen. And also you can, instead of going up to the insert, you can go to here to the side and insert, let's say a button or see, there's a button there. We can add rectangles and labels and all kinds of stuff over here.
So
So
it's like they like to give you multiple ways of doing things in this console, don't they?
no kidding. Yeah, absolutely. Because, once you select a button here, how many different ways can you change the properties, the little data points on a button? Okay, so you can go over here. Well, first of all, you can double click on a button and change the text of it. Okay, you can go over here and change it over here. Okay, so I've got a character turn I don't want in there. There's all kinds of things we can change over here on the right side. This is called the property window of the property pane on the right side. Okay. And
I mean,
then
that's the most common way I do it. I don't know about you. I certainly use that property pane the most.
yeah. And then, I mean, you got property, then you have advanced. Okay. I won't touch on the ideas. That's sort of like a artificial intelligence thing. They're trying to help you out, give you some ideas of things to do with your app. But yeah, there's different ways of changing your properties there. But then you've got this little drop down up here. I'm sure you've changed properties up here as well, right, Barry?
Yeah, I have.
So it
Definitely.
allows you to get everything. It's all in alphabetical order. And then if you select the property, you can go here. This is what I'll always refer to as the coding window or the expression bar. In Microsoft Excel, you've got an FX bar at the top where you can put in expressions where you put all your code. Okay, so
And it's probably worth noting that you can also change some properties of, like, if you double click, if you hold in control and click both buttons, you
uh-huh,
can change property of multiple buttons at once. So you don't have to go and do one at a
true.
time. You can actually select multiple, and
Change both.
yeah, and that can be,
Absolutely.
size and color and all that sort of stuff as well.
That's a good point. Absolutely. And so we have a label. We also have another one is a text input. Sometimes it's called a text box. So that's over there. If you guys want any more information on these controls, I have a very basic video on buttons. If you do a search for Power Apps button or Darren Nice button, you'll find that one. It's actually one of my more popular videos, which has really surprised me. And then I have one for the text input as well. But so we've got all that. So you have data sources over here. So we're going to connect to SharePoint here in a little bit. So if you connect to either of those three or any other data sources, you would go here to data and you can add them here.
So Darren, just
Going,
on the data sources, just so everyone understands, I mean, why would you need a data source? And can you get away with, can you write an app without a data source?
you could write an app, but almost any type of application will need some use of data. Um, so, for example, even a child playing a video game. I know when I grew up, I played Legend of Zelda in the classic Nintendo 8-bit. I would play. It was actually Legend of Zelda. Was the first game I had. It was it was like gold plated or had gold. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if you're about my age.
Yeah, was it on the like floppy disk and you had like a big stack of them and you had to plug them in?
Yeah,
Or you had
absolutely. Yeah, they sort of look like floppy disks. Absolutely. But you go in there and you would play for hours and hours and ask you if you wanted to save it. Well, a lot of the other games like Super Mario Brothers, you could play the game and then you would run out of lives and you would be done playing. Well, if you were to turn off your Nintendo, turn off the gaming system and come back later, all your progress would be lost. You have to start from the
yeah,
beginning.
tears, right? Tears.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Or with the Legend of Zelda, you play for hours. It took months to get through that game. So if you forgot to save and you were playing all weekend or something like that, yeah, absolutely tears. But yeah, so when an application is running, you have everything running in memory. It's sort of like the reason when if you have a desktop computer, a Windows computer, an Apple, you've got stuff like RAM that runs as soon as you boot up the computer, and the data is stored there. But if you need that data to persist between reboots or you know have it persist whenever the electricity goes out or whatever, when you boot it back up, you can retrieve that stuff from the hard drive. So sort of like that with an application. If you type something in, you know, uh, if
Yeah.
you close down the application to come back, do you want that to be there
Yeah.
again?
So I
You know?
suppose the question that you got to ask yourself is how important is the data? Is your end user going to be happy if the app dies and he loses all the data he's put
Oh,
in? Is it maybe if it's a simple form like maybe just collecting some details, you could have that running on the app because even if it crashed, it wouldn't take them long to plug back in. You might have a
right.
send, and that would send that direct from memory. But anything that took some time to fill out, you'd want to write that back. So if something did happen, they wouldn't lose all
Yeah.
that data.
And to be honest, I mean, data is the lifeblood of any business. So that businesses spend all kinds of money on all kinds of different things, and their databases, as time goes on, becomes probably their biggest asset. The
Mm,
database of all their customers. If they lost their database of all their customers, they sort of have to start from scratch,
yeah,
or hope that their customers come back to them,
yeah,
or something, call them back up. And I mean, just think about your cell phone. If you didn't have your contacts database in your phone, have you memorized everybody's phone number? Have you written down those people's phone numbers on a piece of paper or something? So we use databases all the time. You know,
yeah. So
um,
basically, every app should have a data source, unless it's just
absolutely,
very simple. Basically,
yeah.
that's the rule of
It
thumb here.
needs it needs some place to read and write
Mhm.
data to and
Yeah,
from.
and maybe we can get to it later. I don't know, but I've always heard, and I've never actually used Excel, but I've always heard on
Really?
forums and stuff, people say don't use Excel because it's shit. Sorry, excuse my
Yeah.
language, but yeah, SharePoint lists seem to be much better in terms of working with Power Apps. What's your view on that?
Yeah, my experience with using Excel is you're actually using OneDrive to connect to it. So if you think about that, everybody has their own OneDrive. So if I have an Excel document and I bring it into Power Apps and use it as a data source, well, first of all, it can only be open once. So if I have it open in Excel from my OneDrive and I try to connect to it from here, it's going to say, "Oh, but it's locked. I can't really do
that's a
anything with it. So
pain.
you got to close it down. So only one person can be in it. And then another thing is, okay, it's stored on my OneDrive, but if I share this app with you, Barry, do you have access to that Excel document, or is it going to try to look to your OneDrive for that same
Mm.
document? Is that document going to be over there? There's just all kinds of weird questions you got to like work through.
Yeah. So
And
I take it you can't save it on SharePoint in terms of a shared SharePoint space. It has to be on a OneDrive.
Um, I am like 90% sure. I've never seen it connected to. I think a lot of people assume that. I was like, okay, well, Power Apps can, talk to Excel, it can talk to SharePoint, it can talk to OneDrive. Well, I want to talk to an Excel sheet that's inside a SharePoint. Um, and I could read the data I could access the document in the document library, just the document itself. But as
Yeah.
far as opening up that Excel document and reading and writing data in that, um, I don't know of a way to do that. I've never heard of anyone doing that. So
Yeah.
if anybody is in the chat and has ever heard of that and actually has an example that we could look at, I would love to see that. But I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I haven't come across that either. I think it definitely uses the OneDrive connection quite a bit to do any sort of
Yeah.
transformation through that well,
Yeah.
spreadsheets and stuff.
And now, if you wanted to upload any images into your app, you would go to multimedia. If you have any videos, images, audio files, that type of stuff, that's where you can access that. Power Automate, we really won't talk too much about tonight. It's, the Power Apps is a part of the Power Platform. Well, Power Automate is another component that's a part of the Power Platform, and you can integrate stuff. Sometimes it does things better than, or it does things that Power Apps cannot, like create files and things like that. Um,
Just a quick one on the images one, because there's something
uh-huh,
that I found out. It took me a little while. Maybe it's just me being slow. But if you click on the actual screen itself,
uh-huh,
the screen, yeah, and then you go
uh-huh.
to background image on the right hand, the properties tab. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm on let me go to the
Uh,
tree view. I got the screen.
Now on the right hand side, if you go right to the right, that where it says background image, you drop that down. It says plus. You can so you
Okay.
can add images in there. But
Yeah.
if you want to delete images, then you need to go to the images repository on the left, because
Yeah.
sometimes you might want to remove some images. So
Yeah. So that's a good point. So if we're over here in media, you can click on upload, um, and it would bring up a dialog box for you to select a file or an image. So that's sort of like a shortcut to that. So you can go over here. So if you click on that, it sort of does the same thing as that. But yeah,
yeah,
if you want to remove it, you'd have to go in here. And you've got 200 megabytes. I don't know if you guys can see that down here at the bottom. You can only upload files that are no larger than 64 megabytes. And for the whole app, you can only have up to 200 megabytes. So,
that's worth knowing.
yeah. Advanced tools we won't go over tonight, but I just sort of want to do an exploration of the user interface here. So obviously it's advanced tools that you can work with, monitor the tests. It's more of advanced stuff, or at least intermediate. And then search is great. It's something that Microsoft added probably, I don't know what, 2 months ago or so. Allows
Mm.
you to search, let's say, for a variable or a control name across the whole project, across all the screens, and you can do find and replace. Text if you
Yeah,
wanted to update a variable name, where before that was sort of hard.
yeah, you have to go one by one. I've used that quite a few times already.
So typically, what you need to do, what you're doing in Power Apps, is you're building an application where you um, insert, update, delete, read data. Okay. So we've already talked about what we're going to use as a data source, and that's SharePoint. This is what SharePoint looks like here. So I created a brand new SharePoint site called Power Apps Podcast. Now, typically, you're going to ask for your IT department to create the SharePoint site for you. And hopefully they make you the site owner, so you have full control to add your list and to modify things here within the site. Um,
And
and
just some tips really on when you create your list.
uh-huh.
Try and reference it so it references the name of your app, just so that's easier. Because over
Oh,
time you might build up loads of different lists, and then it might
Okay.
become difficult to correlate them with the app. So maybe come up with your own naming convention or have some way of referencing it.
Absolutely. So I'm thinking tonight we will create a SharePoint list called for contacts. So we might have like just people's names and phone numbers and email addresses, that type of thing. So if as you're pointing out, so if we're creating a new list here, I could click on list and so what you're pointing, so we'll create one from blank. So let's say contacts. Um, well, the name of our app isn't contacts, it's what episode one. It's really episode two.
EP1, EP2 underscore contact.
All right, contact. Now, the question is, Barry, because we have that underscore there, is Power Apps not going to like that and want us to put those little apostrophes there? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't found that with the underscore. I found it with the
Okay,
space. Like
with the
if I
space.
put a space, and the same with the column headings within your SharePoint list. Don't put
Uh-huh.
spaces. It's come back to haunt me later. So I've used
Yeah.
underscore. I haven't had any issues yet. I don't know about
Okay.
you.
And so that's what I don't like, and I'm never tried to put a underscore here. So obviously, since you pointed it out, we're not gonna have a problem there. Is if you have a space in there, every time you reference that
Mm.
list, that database table, even though it's really a SharePoint list, you always have to put these apostrophes around it, which is a little bit of a pain in the butt. Now, whenever I create my list, I always uncheck this. Do you keep that checked yourself, Barry?
I,
Or
I actually keep it checked, but what's the
okay.
advantage of, but that's just how I've always done it. So maybe you want to shed
For
some
me,
light on
I
best
guess for
practice.
me, I don't like this side navigational
Mm.
bar to be cluttered. If I end up with
Yeah.
20 or 40 different SharePoint lists, I wouldn't want it to be cluttered up.
And then where do you go to find it? Is there like a lists page where you can easily
What
find that?
Yes. What I do is I just click on this little site contents. Do you see that
Okay.
there? I know it's sort of grayed out a little bit there. Let me go ahead and click create and we can see it better here in a moment. Yeah. So we're looking at, of course, it creates a title for us. See this little site contents. If you ever click on site contents, it's going to take you back to all the content. So it's got all this stuff that was created for us initially when you created a new SharePoint site. But here's our episode 2 contacts. I'm going to go back into there. Now, typically when I create a SharePoint list, I always like to see the ID, the unique identifier that it automatically generates for you. I don't know if you guys saw what I just did there. So I went to this add column and I went down to the very bottom and clicked on this show hide columns. And these are a bunch of other columns that SharePoint creates for you for any list that you create. And they sort of hide them because most people aren't interested in them. But I just sort of wanted to show you guys that. All right, so I'm fine there. So and you also you can drag these columns around. So I always like to have that ID. Being a database guy, an application developer for 20 years, I'm always want my unique identifier very first and to the left, listed first. So we got the title. Now this is going to be for context. So we'll add we could add a first and last name. A lot of times for title, I'll always leave that title column name alone. It creates title for every single SharePoint list, and some people change the name. I don't like to change, I'm sorry, a column name within SharePoint because sometimes SharePoint gets sort of stuck and it wants to reference that column. So if I rename title to full name, sometimes it's always going to refer to it as title or
Title.
field
Yeah.
one. Have you ever had that problem with SharePoint?
Yeah. So I've had it. So I basically always leave title, and if there's ever a name I'm collecting, I just put it in title. Also, another
Uh-huh.
point, when you actually if you maybe got a like a Excel spreadsheet that you want to import in and create a SharePoint list from,
Uh-huh.
it'll also label, even though the columns look like they whatever you want to call them, SharePoint actually references them as like field one, field two. So when you go and try and reference it, so the way I go is if it's more than one column, I'll always just create the whole list manually rather than import it or try and change.
Barry, I was hoping you were going to tell me a workaround around that.
I haven't found one yet, other than creating it manually. Yeah, there probably is one.
So
If
just to
anyone knows.
sort of give a visual on what Barry was just describing, if I go into new and I say list, and I have a whole Excel spreadsheet with all the column names already set up, and I could have 100 columns, whatever. I was like, okay, from Excel, and I click on that, and I'm like, here's my my Excel spreadsheet. and it's got all the column names in there. You bring it in, and it doesn't really bring the column names in. It says field 0, field 1,
Yeah.
field 2,
Oh, it's a
right?
pain in the butt. It really is.
And I was hoping that you'd tell me how to get around that, because that just makes me want to create it from scratch and then
I've
import the data.
wasted hours because I'd imported
Yeah,
a whole app and then it sort of broke all the references and yeah, it was a pain.
big pain. All right, so I'm going to go back into context now. I'm just going to leave title for the full name. I think for this example, I'm not going to mess with first name, last name. But when you're dealing data, you want to have everything as granular as possible. So I would want first name to be in its own column, last name to be its own column, because there's sometimes when you want to reference just one thing and you don't have to do some type of calculation or a function to pull that out. So I'd recommend, if you're building a real application, that you have all those. And then I like to have a column like this, like the title, where I throw both of them in there. I think what I would like to do, I'm going to click on add column, and let's add a column for someone's phone number. I'm just going to call it phone. I'm going to click on save. Okay, there we go. And let's add in a single line of text for email. Now, Barry, do you know how many characters that the user will have available to them when they work with these columns? A single line of
Oh,
text?
for a single line, is it 255 characters? I have no idea. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it's 255.
what a guess. Huh? I had a 1 in 255 chance of that. Oh, cool.
Yeah, phone, email. Let's add in just so we have a different data type, because everything so far has been text with the exception of the ID. One thing I don't like, are you used to that whenever you use this add column, there's this big card that pops up. It was
Yeah, and it
created,
takes ages to go away, doesn't it? You're like,
No,
hey,
I
get
wish it
away,
would
get
just
away.
so annoying. So a lot of times when that keeps popping up, I just get really frustrated. I'll click on this little sprocket and I'll go to list settings, and it will show me all the columns down here in the middle. Okay, so there's our title, our modified, created. What's weird, it's not showing us ID or some of the others, but anyway, I'm going to create a column here. So I'll click on that, and it's going to look a little different as I'm adding this. And I'm going to add in their birth date. And I want to set that up as a date and time. Very
And
good.
go back to your point earlier. So if you do the wrong type, like date and time,
Mhm.
can you just come in and change it to a different type, or do you recommend just delete it and creating a new one?
Um, if it allows you to change it, I would change it. It will allow you in some cases and won't allow you in others.
Mm,
So I don't have like off the top of my head, I don't have a chart of like what can be changed and what can't. I think in some
mm.
cases it's like one type can be changed into maybe two or four different types, but can't be changed
Yeah.
to something else.
And even let's say you had your app running and it already had a link into your SharePoint list as its data source.
Uh-huh.
Would you go in and change the the column type at that point, or would you go, actually that might break something in the app, let's just add a new one and then
Whenever you add or change any columns or even delete any columns within a list, let's say you've got a tie to that list. So each of those data connections will be based on the list or a database table. And then data Power Apps won't know about any of those changes unless you do a refresh. Okay. So when we get back over to Power Apps, remind me and
yeah,
I'll
okay,
do that.
cool.
Okay, so we'll do a birthday, date, and time. And now I'm just gonna make sure we're keeping up to date with some of the comments here. Data is king. And people that use Excel's data source probably do because they don't know about SharePoint lists. That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, they may
Well,
not
now
know
they
that.
know, now they know about SharePoint
Yeah.
lists.
Also, I create my SharePoint list from Access tables. I find it faster than creating them directly from SharePoint. Yes, I have found that to be like really awesome, and it's really fast. So yeah, if you have Excel documents or even Access data, use Access. Access is great for getting data in to SharePoint really quick. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, so I'm going to go down to the very bottom. There's a few settings here. Most of the time, I just leave these alone, and I'll click OK. And that's probably enough to get through some basic concepts. So I'm going to click on this EP2 contact, and it's going to show us the list. So I'm going to leave that right there. Now, what I do need to do before I go back to Power Apps is I need a good reference to this SharePoint site. Okay, so what I do is I open this up, go to the root of this site, and I'll use my middle mouse button and click on this little icon here. And this is the root of this site. And then I'll copy that. I'll go over to Power Apps. Now, as you remember, we were talking about this pane over here to the left. We can click on data. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on add data. And by default, it's going to show us some Dataverse stuff. And we're not really interested in that. We want the connectors. We want to go find the SharePoint connector, which is right here. And if you don't see it, you sort of expand this. If you don't see it right away, you can start typing share and it will come up SharePoint. Okay, and I'm going to click on my account that I have. And this is where we're going to paste that link to that site that I just put on the clipboard. I'm going to click connect.
Can I just
And
ask one thing of you, Darren?
yeah.
Where you connect using your account, have you ever had it where you want to connect using maybe a service account, or do you always just go, let's just connect? And when you connect with your account, it just means whoever logs onto that app, it will connect to that SharePoint list with whoever's logged on
So
their account.
the different connectors, the individual connectors can work very differently from one to another. For example, the SharePoint, I'm using my account to use that. However, if somebody else, let's say I shared this app with you and Barry, you used it, and let's say we were all in the same organization, that would need to be true, right? You would sign in, it would actually use that connector under your credentials and connect to that SharePoint site. And because of that, if I share this application with you, I would also need to make sure that you have access to that SharePoint site.
Yeah.
Um,
But you could have it so that it used a service account, like a single account. So whoever logged onto it would always use that account rather than whoever's logging onto the app.
I'm trying to
There
think.
is a way of doing that, because I've
I
done it
know,
before. But
I know how to do that in Power Automate, because I know there's a menu in there to do that. Have you ever experienced that within Power Apps?
Well, maybe I'm getting confused. I think I have. Let me
Okay.
double check that. We can make a note of that. But yeah,
Let
okay,
me
maybe I'm confusing it.
let me select this one list here, and I'll go back and I'll try one thing before okay. So I'll check this off. I click connect, so that at least brings it in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down in here and look at SharePoint again, and I'm going to see if it gives. I don't think it gives me any options. If I
No, I
click on
think
it again,
you're right. I think I'm actually referring to
now it's
connections in
okay.
Power
So
Automate.
Okay, so I'm here within SharePoint. It says add a connection. I wonder if I can. Okay, so I have some other options here. Connect directly cloud services or a data gateway. So if you have an on-premise SharePoint, you could do that. Let me see if I click connect here. Does it give me any other options to use, like a service level account, like you were talking about? And it doesn't seem like it's giving me that. But I do know that with Power Automate you can, and I've actually seen
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
thanks for
And
clarifying.
the other example that I was going to tell you was with SQL Server. If you use that connector, if you open a connection, that connection itself is shared with everybody within that environment, that Power Apps environment. So it can actually be like a scary thing, especially if you do it in the default environment where everybody's a creator. If you create a production environment, and when I talk about different environments, I'm talking about this thing up here in the upper right corner. You can change your different environments. So I have Darren Nice's environment, Nice's. I have a Power Pages preview, and I have a Recover Kurt. These are my 4 environments. So the default one here, if any new user were to be added to the organization, and they're given a license to use Power Apps, even a trial, they're going to be able to use that SQL Server connector and that connection, which could be really problematic if that account, that logon and password that was created, actually had access to do some damage to the data. So the different connectors can work differently, but what we're working with tonight, this SharePoint, is that it's always going to go under the user that's currently logged in. So. All right. So now we have that. Let's so the 2 things that we're going to work with tonight mainly are the gallery and the form. So we can do it one of two ways. We can go over here to the right and click on this plus, and we can add it. Typically, I just go up to the top and hit gallery, and I pick one of these. And 99% of the time, I'm clicking on this blank vertical. I don't use any of these galleries because it already has stuff in there. And a lot of times I rip it out and then it causes a bunch of errors that I have to fix. And it's a little bit of a pain. I use blank horizontals to go across if I'm doing some type of tabs. And I really haven't found I know there's some good reason to use a flexible height, but there's one limitation where it won't allow you to have multiple columns. So a lot of times I don't use that. So how about you? Do you use these at the top or
Yeah,
do you use
I actually use the pre-populated ones, but that's just
Okay.
because yeah, I find it quite easy. But I'd like to see how you do it with the blank ones. So let's
Yeah.
go with that.
Yeah, it's a little more upfront work, but I always like to have like a blank thing that I work from and then just sort of add to it.
Mm.
Because if you start taking things out, it gives you errors and stuff that I don't like to deal with. So the very first thing I like to do in with something like a gallery, even a form we're going to see in a few moments, if I click off of this gallery, and a gallery is a repeater control. Okay, it's going to connect to a data source for every record in there. It's going to repeat whatever you give it. Right now it doesn't have anything, okay? And it's not connected to a data source.
And
But
what's the simplest way of defining what a gallery is? Is it like a directory? Like it basically lists whatever you have in your
yeah,
data
so
source?
that's I believe that's the simplest way to describe a gallery is what I was saying, which is it's a repeater. It's just going to repeat whatever you put in here. So if I put let me just add something in here. Let's put in a button. Okay, well look at this. So there's this first record, and if I make this first record shorter, now by default, it connects to this thing called custom gallery samples, just trying to help you out at the beginning. It's not really a data source. But if you look at this, what did it do? I brought over one button and it repeated it 4 times. So that's what I would call it, a repeater. And coming from an ASP.NET and a .NET Windows development environment, I'm used to the word repeater because they had repeater controls. Whatever you threw in there at the top, it would always repeat it for every record that you have.
Yeah.
Um,
So you haven't got a link to a data source now, but if you did have a link to a data source, then it would repeat all the rows in your list, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And the very first thing I like to do is I like to give a border around because if I click off of this, look at this. It's like if you came to the screen, it's like, what's going on? Somebody added 4 buttons. No, what I like to do is give it a little bit of a border here so I know exactly what that is there. And something else I like to do is I like to give it a little bit of a background. So a lot of times people have a gallery there. They always like to have a separator between the rows so they can sort of
Mm.
see what's going on. So I like to give my galleries a nice gray background. Okay. And then there's a property for a gallery. And you can find this property over here in this property pull down menu. So if you go all the way down, it's here at the top called template fill. And I just replace this with white. And now I've got so I can see, instead of just 4 buttons, I see that there's sort of like 4 different things and there's a separator between them. Okay. So let's connect this to our data source. So there's a few ways to do that. So if you click on the gallery and it's not connected to a data source, it's going to try to help you out. It's try to say, hey, you want to connect to this? And I'm going to click on it. Okay. And there's actually no records in there. And the most basic thing that you can do within Power Apps is actually run. So right now we're in design. We're designing an application, right? So we can either hit F5 on our keyboard or we can click on the play button in the upper right corner. It's going to run it. And now our button's gone because there's no data. So it's not going to repeat it, not even once, because there's not even one record there. Okay. So we've got that. Now on the right side of the screen, what I want to do is add a form. So I'll add it. And again, this just looks like this white thing over here on the screen. If I click off of it, it's like, what is this? So again, I like to give it a border while I'm working with it. And eventually, if you don't want the border, that's fine. But when I start off, I always like to give it a border so I know what I'm working with here. And I'll expand it a little bit. Okay. So the gallery repeats all the records that are associated with it that you pointed at. A form allows you to modify one row or one record of a data source. Okay. So let's go in here and
So,
let's,
so just to clarify in that, so in the gallery, you might have like, oh, show me all the names, like all the names that are in my database listed, and
uh
then the field. If I click on the name, the field would then take all the other associated attributes with the name in that row and present them there, where you can then edit them. So it's a way of, you use the gallery to select something in your database, and the form to actually edit it.
exactly, precisely.
Yeah.
That's perfectly put. Yeah. So we actually need to tell the form what data source we want. So we need to do the same thing with it, which is we're going to click on this. Well, if I click on connect to data, oh, it shows me all the data sources. Well, in either the gallery or the form, you can go to the right side and there's a data source drop down and we can just click on it and it's going to add it there. And it's like, oh, please wait. Let me go get the fields here. Okay, so we have title, we have phone, we have email, and then birth date. And all SharePoint lists have attachments. I don't know that I really want to work with attachments. So I can just click on what's called a data. Let me go back to the tree view here. You see this? We have a screen. We added a gallery. Okay. And we also have this form. Now, on this form, we got this. Each of these things are called data cards. Okay. So attachments. This is a grouping of controls, some visual elements here. Now, I could just hit delete and it will get rid of it, or I can just make it invisible if I wanted. But because I'm not going to use it, I'm just going to delete the whole data card. Okay. And I think what I'm going to do to make this simple, so you can have many columns worth of fields. What I'm going to do is for this columns property is I'm going to change this to 1. Okay, very, very good. And because we have no data, we need to add some data. So there is a property of a form called default mode. So by default, initially, do you want to add records or do you want to modify records? Well, right now, I want to definitely add some records. So I'm going to click on new. Okay. Now I'm going to run this by clicking the run button. Okay. I'm going to type in here Darren Niece, and my phone number is 999-867-5309. And my email address, darrenniece.us. And my birthday is today. I was born today.
Is it really?
Maybe this is a
Maybe
little
not.
older. Maybe 1970, something like that. All right, so I've got all this data filled out. How do I get this into the database? So I filled it out, but the data isn't showing over here. So there must be something else we need to do to get this data into the database, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a button, which everybody's used to having, right? A button to do something. And over here for this button, I'm going to change the text by going over here to the right side. I'll type out save. Okay. Now the button has got there's two really important things about a button. Number one is the text. So we just changed the text there. The second thing that you want to pay attention to is the on select property. So for a button here, you see there's an on select that's already selected. So we could put some code or an expression here that will occur, that will be fired whenever that button is clicked on. And in this case, what I want to do is there's a function that I know about off the top of my head called submit form. And you notice as I'm typing here, it's showing me what I would call IntelliSense. Do you call that IntelliSense, Barry, or do you
Yeah,
call it something
yeah,
else?
yeah. That's what it's called.
All right, submit form. And the name of my form I can see over here in my tree view. It's called Form 1. So I'm going to type in Form 1 tab, and then I'll need to have a beginning and ending parenthesis that sort of encloses the parameter that I'm giving to that submit form function. Okay. Now, if I run this, I'm going to run it again and I'm going to click on the button now. And look at that. I got a button over there showing up on my gallery. So I know I've got at least one record there. Now, I don't know why at this point we would need a button over here in the gallery. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. But I know we do have at least one record. It says add an item from the insert pane. So if I click on that, it brings me, it moves it from the tree view to the insert. And I can bring over a little menu here. Oh, there's Darren East right there. Look at that. And let me run this again. And so it says no item to display. So Once we added the record, the form's like, I've added a record. My job's done. I'm out of here. You can't really do anything more. So
Darren, quickly, what did you where you added that on the gallery? What did you actually pull in there to get your name?
yeah, what I did was, in fact, let me actually do it again. So it says add item from the insert pane or connect to data. Well, I've already connected to data. So I'm going to click on that little link there. And what
Yeah,
happened was I was actually over here in the tree view looking at all my screens and my controls. And then I
yeah,
clicked on this and you notice what happened? It moved from that over here. So if I expand this, it went from tree view to insert
yeah,
and it allowed me to click on this first one, text label. And there I
yeah.
am. And it just sort of guessed what type of data I wanted in there.
Ah, right. Because
And it's
the way I do it, right, is I put the gallery in, and then I link the gallery to the data source, and
uh-huh.
then it basically adds like some of the columns of things, so like title, and maybe a subheading would be another column in the, and then you can, it basically populates that for you. So
Right.
this way you've sort of done it. You haven't got anything. You're still connected to the data source.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand how it guessed what uh, your the text box value was.
Yeah. Well, for example, just to let everybody know, perhaps you would have brought this vertical over here and it would have
Yeah,
looked like this, right? And if you would have connected this to the data source, see right there,
yeah,
it's showing us the title. It's probably showing us the ID, and
yeah.
we don't have any images, involved. So a lot of times what I do with, I'm gonna give this a border so I know what I'm dealing with. If I'm like, well, I don't need an image, and I'll delete that. Well,
But
look, now
also,
I've got it
if you click on that
mhm,
like just that frame around that top gallery item,
right there.
yeah, it's right there. The layout there. You can, if you drop that down,
Uh-huh.
you can change those a little bit, and also I think
Okay.
under edit in the fields you can add and remove fields just above the
Are you
layout
talking about
option.
this layout thing right here?
Yeah, yeah, in that. But actually, if you close that and you go just above the layout option where it says, click back on that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
where it says fields. Yeah, so you can,
Wow.
yeah, you can
Okay.
you can drop those lists down, and then you can select which
So
columns you
let's
want
say
to
I want my
display.
the phone number there. Let's see, where's the phone number? See it? I thought it was
So
in
you
the
can just say title for the name, and phone number if you wanted to show,
I think I'm I think I messed up. I have this error here because I ripped out that image. But let's see if I change this to just title and subtitle. There we go.
there we go. Yeah,
And now we can go to edit
yeah.
and change that.
So the reason I prefer that way, and maybe it's just, for a beginner it might be easier, is because it actually populates your gallery with your SharePoint list data. Then you can go in and just modify it. But yeah, I can see the benefits of using both. Your way, you
Yeah.
can, it's easier to customize. So maybe when you get more familiar with it, then it's easier
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and remove this now, and then I'll bring this up a little more. And then what I want to do, so if I'm running this, it says no item to display. So now I want to do is bring over yet another button, just in case I want to add a new one. I'll say new. And then for the on select for this button, I'm going to use another function called new form. There's probably a good 3 or 4 different functions that you can use for a form. I'm going to say form 1 here. If I run this, if I click on that button, it's going to tell it, hey, form, I want another record. Okay. So now I'm going to type in Barry. His phone number is 999-555-1234. That's a pretty cool phone number you have there.
Yeah. And this is just like adding a new row to your SharePoint list, basically using a form to add a new row.
Absolutely. Um, email.com, and you were born yesterday.
Yeah.
You're older than me. You're older than me, Barry.
Just.
So I'm going to click on save, and now you're in there. Now let's go back over to our SharePoint list. Let's go back over here, and I see Darren here. Where are you at? Well, sometimes it takes a few seconds, right? So if I hit refresh on the browser, it should show me both. There we go.
Okay.
And so we're talking. Yeah, we're creating new records there in SharePoint. Now, what if I want to edit one of these over here in this form? Well, there's yet another function that we have. So if this gallery here is clicked on, well, we've played around with the on select for these buttons. What about an on select for this gallery? Let's go see if we have that on select. There you go. So an on select, what I'll do is say edit form. So so far we've used submit form, new form. Now we're saying edit form. And inside these parentheses, I'll say form 1. That's the name of our form. So now whenever I click on Barry, there's one more step we need to do. So it's going to turn it into an edit, but it doesn't have a record, doesn't know where to pull the records in from. So for a gallery, what you want to do is go find the item property. You could look for it over here. A lot of times I'll just go over here to advanced and I'll go down here to item. Okay. And I know I want to edit whatever record is selected over there in that gallery. So I know the gallery is probably called gallery 1. Gallery 1.selected. Okay. And look, there's Barry's data. Okay. So I'll bring this up and let's change your phone number to 1111. I'm going to click save.
So that gallery 1.selected, basically what that does is create a link from your form to your gallery. So it knows
it does.
Yeah, whichever what row you're pointing on, it knows that it's that row, and then it'll open those details in the form.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we know that it's changed it? Well, I can click over here on Darren and it's going to execute that edit. And then I'm going to click back on Barry. And look, there's the 1111. All right. What else can we do here? What's some basic stuff that we want to finish disclosing here before we end tonight? So we've got we can do a new form. We can do an edit form. We've done a submit form. Is there anything else that we need to do here? What about if we don't let's add somebody in here. Let's call them Waldo. We don't know his information, but we're just going to save it for now. But eventually we decided we don't like Waldo and we want to delete Waldo. So how do we remove a record? And there's two ways that you could do this. You could actually put a button inside here and say delete, or put an icon, maybe a red X, and it would actually delete Waldo. Or we could put a little button down here. A lot of times I actually want them to see what it is they're about to delete. So hopefully they're a little more cautious. That they know they're going to delete what's being displayed. They can see all the data that's going to be deleted. I'll say delete. And a lot of times I like to change the color of this to like a maroon color, maybe even a bright red. And inside this button, what I'm going to say for the unselect, there's a function called remove. And it's a little bit nicer of a moniker than delete, but you really are deleting the data. So the first parameter for remove, it wants to know what is the name of the data source. And the name of the data source is EP2. It's our contact table, right? And the second parameter within these parentheses, it wants to know what record that we want to delete. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference that gallery. So it's going to be gallery 1.selected. And that's the record I want to delete. So if we run this, I have Waldo selected and I click on delete, it should remove Waldo, and it does. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's great. And I think it can be confusing, right? All of this stuff. I mean, if you're just starting out and you see all of this stuff, it can we might have just overwhelmed you. If you just sort of getting used to it, then we might have put some clarity there. So thanks, Darren. But I think the main thing for you to do is just go and practice it, right? Just try those simple commands, put all the buttons in, play around with the gallery to understand how it interacts with the SharePoint list and how the form interacts with the gallery, and try a few examples yourself, and it won't be long. But I think these are the core things that you need to know, right? This is what most apps are made out of at a basic level.
Absolutely. Davis King says notify is basic. And I just sort of want to address that with, let's say if maybe in one of these buttons here on the submit, we could say notify. So what notify does is it displays a little message at the top of the screen, and we could say record was saved. Okay, so that's one parameter, and we could leave it at that if we wanted to. If we give it another parameter of notification type, oh, we get some intelligence here. So if we're displaying an error, it might display it in red. Information, which is the default, is going to be like a little gray box, and then we have success. So we successfully save the data to the database. I'm going to pick on the success. Okay, and there's another parameter. Like if you wanted to stay up there a specified number of seconds, you could specify something like 3,000 for 3 seconds if you wanted to. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and modify Darren Neese and change his phone number to 5555 and click on save. It's going to save it. Then it's going to call that notify and say it was saved. So thanks, data is king. Now, Barry, is there anything else that you feel like we should talk about tonight? I know it's getting late over there where you're at, and I don't want to keep you.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered a fair deal tonight. I think it's a really good basics there for beginners. So I think once you get to grips of this, then you'll be ready to move on to the next. But don't overwhelm yourselves with it.
Yeah.
Just get to understand the basics, watch it again, and just try everything yourself. The best way to learn is to actually do it yourself. And what's your recommendation on putting comments above the scripts that you're writing? Within the actual scripting window, you can put 2 forward slashes, and then you can write some comments. So sometimes if you're trying to learn and you've done something, make a little note about what you've done there, just so when you come back later,
absolutely,
you might
so we
remind
can
yourself.
put some spacing in here. It doesn't hurt the code at all. And so, as you said, 2 forward slashes, and we could put anything after those 2 forward slashes. We could say this code saves this record. Let's do that record, okay? And then also, if you wanted to, let's say you've got some code that actually works and you don't want that code to be in there anymore, you could take out the code, or you could say, I might want to use that code in the future or something. You could actually comment out a whole block of code that spans
I do that
multiple
quite
lines.
a lot.
Yeah. So if you do and this is very similar to JavaScript, C#, Java, C, C++. If you do a /* starts a block of comments. At the very bottom, you can say */, and then now that is all commented out. So now we could have left some comments in here and say we don't need this code this week. So we might you uncomment it out next week, something like that.
And just in terms of the code, does it saves every 2 minutes, doesn't it? And but do you go in and save yourself just to?
It does. Let me click on this little settings up here and show you guys something, just so you guys can see this. Scroll down. Look at this. Save changes every 2 minutes. This is a browser level setting. Now the question is, right now, has it been saving every 2 minutes? This is a little bit of a trick question. Would you say yes or no?
Not until you save the first time, I think.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So you could be working for hours like this, lose power, get disconnected, and you will have lost all this work. So if you guys ever hear me in any of my videos, I say a lot of times, save early, save often. So you want to go over here to click down the file pull down menu. Now we gave it a name at the beginning, but we never saved it. So you want to click on save, make sure it's saved. Okay. So we'll do that, and it takes a moment to do that. Okay, then it comes to this screen. And a lot of times it will next show a button called publish. Well, because that was our first save, that becomes our published version. So if anybody tries to use the app or we try to share it, they're going to see the version that we just saved. That becomes the default published version. But if we go back to our application, try to add a new button, okay, make some type of change, and we go over here to file. Now, a lot of times I use Control S on my keyboard to save often. But you can go over to the file menu and actually click on the save. You can leave some version notes for yourself. So if you click on save, now if I were to share this application with somebody, they're not going to see that button I just added because I haven't published it yet. And then once I click on publish, then they'll see it. But you'll notice something new here. It says see all versions. So you click on this, and it's going to show us the two manual saves that we did. Now, let's say I did this save and then I worked for several hours and I was saving every 2 minutes. Do you know, Barry, if there would be a version for each save of each of those 2 minutes?
I don't know. I don't think so, because I haven't seen loads of files. I think it's only the last one.
Yeah, the saves that you do manually. And that's why it's important to do manual saves. So you create these little versions that you could roll back to. And if you've worked at all in Power Apps for any amount of time, what you'll learn very soon is after you make some changes to your application, there is an undo. You can hit Control Z on your keyboard. There's a little backward arrow up here with the play button that should undo what you just did. And right now it just worked, but it also put the button, okay, put the button there in the top of the screen, right where I added, and I've hit back again. Sometimes this undo does not work. Have you noticed that,
Yeah,
Barry, at
yeah,
all?
I've done that. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, sometimes it'll work, and then yeah, another time might
Sometimes
not
it
work.
doesn't.
So yeah, it's good.
So that's why I always like to hit that Control S. It will save. I got that little restore point. So if I mess something up and I've been doing those Control S's, I can roll back to that last manual save. It's very nice. Or you could just close down right there without saving, and then hopefully open it back up, and you'll get the last automatic 2-minute save. So that's
Yeah,
important. Now, what about announcements for the podcast? We have somebody suggested that we create a audio only version of it. So some people like to listen to this podcast um, while going down the road, or they're mowing their grass, or doing whatever. So we've created an audio version. So you'll find all those links in the video description below, and I'll make sure that those are in there after we get off. Um, so we do have that. What other announcements do we have? We're gonna try to do this more earlier in the day next Wednesday,
yeah,
and
yeah. And what are we going to cover next time? Do you think?
well, what I would like to do is pick up where we left off here.
Yeah,
And so the next thing that I would want to do, typically, once you have some data here, you typically want to be able to filter it. So let's put people in cities or countries, and then we can have a little drop down at the top that allows us to search by continent, by country, by city, whatever we want
yeah,
to do there. Also, we can have a little search text box, so you can search, um, do something like that. Working with drop down list, that'd probably be the type of thing that I would want to do.
yeah, yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think filtering on galleries, drop down to get through some of the other components in there. Yeah, be good.
And I would encourage everybody that if there's anything here, maybe I was talking too fast, or Barry didn't bring up anything I didn't think of to bring it up that was even more basic that I didn't cover here. Hey, leave it in the comments, and we'll try to address those and make sure we don't leave anybody behind. Um, I know whenever I learned things when I first got in the industry 20 years ago, I'd pick up a book on something like Visual Basic 6 is what I was trying to learn. And when I was reading a book, a lot of times somebody would go over something really quickly, even in the
Mm,
book, or watch a video, and it's like, okay, now I'm stuck because I didn't understand what they're saying, or they sort of lost me there. So I don't want to lose anybody. So if there's anything that we didn't cover thoroughly, or you wish we had covered, let us know, and we could
yeah,
cover
yeah. I
that.
mean, everyone's at different levels, right? And some people might understand one thing but not another. So yeah,
Yeah,
don't be shy to let
absolutely.
us
And,
know what
and
you think.
And I recommend each of you, or if this is where you're at, that you open up Power Apps and you do each of these steps. You create your own SharePoint list, you create your own gallery, not just watches. Because if you just watch it, you're not gonna
Mm,
really absorb it. It's not really going to you're not gonna pick up these skills unless you're actually gonna be doing it yourself.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's definitely a doing thing, right? You, unless you're doing it, you just you won't pick it up. You always find out things that when you try and do it, you can listen to it and go, yeah, yeah, I understand that. The minute you try and do it, you're like, oh gosh, where did that come from? It's
absolutely.
always the
So true.
way.
All right.
Cool.
Very good. Well, I
All
won't keep
right.
you up any longer, Barry. And
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Darren. That was
yeah,
fantastic. I think really,
awesome. Thank
really
you.
great presentation. And I think we covered a lot for beginners, and valuable session. Certainly is, I
Yeah,
think, for you guys starting out. So hopefully you found that useful.
yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining
Cool.
us.
Thanks,
Bye bye.
guys. Catch you next time.
Catch you next time.
Bye.